All right, this is pretty cool. I'm here with Ryan Wellner. Ryan and I go way back, all the way back to Chaminade High School together. And now Ryan is in his 7th season at Notre Dame as the defensive coordinator and the director of recruiting for the men's lacrosse program. Ryan, you were also named Division I Assistant Coach of the Year by U.S. Lacrosse back in 2023 as well. Is that right?
That is correct. Great to see you too, John.
Awesome. Great to see you, Ryan. And this season, Notre Dame is coming off a 3 very big game win streak over Richmond, UNC, and this past weekend, Duke. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys are sitting at number 1. It's a pretty great place to be. And we're so lucky to have you, Ryan. This is our first lacrosse chat up. And for those that are not familiar with lacrosse, it is a new platform and community for athletes, coaches, families, and fans where they can share their sports stories, their faith stories, and how all that really connects together. So Ryan, in that brief little intro, what did I miss? Give us a little bit more about who you are, where you're at, and how this season's been so far.
Yeah, again, appreciate you having me on. Excited to be here. I think it's really awesome what you all have done in lacrosse in the last few weeks. I played around the app. It's extremely needed, and it's very enlightening. So I appreciate that. And I've been here at Notre Dame, like you said, for 7 years, had some success, 2-time national champion. We've got a great squad this year, one game at a time. Philosophy, can't get too far down the line, but, as we prepare for Syracuse this weekend, we're excited about that challenge. It's senior day here at Notre Dame. So our seniors, of which we've got a few Chaminade Flyers on the squad, are going to get their last shot on the home turf. So I expect a hard-fought battle. That's an incredible opportunity for those.
Yeah,
boys. It's awesome. It's fun. We've been very biased in the recruiting and selective. I think in our height of the Flyers, we had 14 Flyers on the roster. And I think one of the jerseys actually is now being hung. It's hung at Chaminade. So a little biased in our recruiting, but spent 9 years at the Naval Academy prior as the associate head coach, interim for 6 months. And I've had some stops along the way at Stony Brook, a little local to you, Washington and Lee, Stevens Institute of Technology. And I got my start in college coaching at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point, New York. So it's been a fun ride. If you would have asked me in high school if I would have been a college coach, I would have told you were crazy. But like you, I've kind of found my calling. I love working with young student athletes, motivated, driven, and it's all about the connections. And I look back at my high school coaches and in particular guys that and the impact they had in my life is the reason why I coach.
That's incredible. That's amazing. Let's stay a little bit on the topic of this current season, if you don't mind, and we'll talk a little bit about, your boys are under a lot of pressure. Every weekend seems to be a make or break game. How do you help the boys stay grounded? How do they stay grounded, knowing, like you said, sort of that one game at a time philosophy, but that's still a lot for them to handle? How do they handle that?
Yeah, what's funny is that we're a relatively new and inexperienced group. The previous rosters have been repeat players with experience. This group is relatively young, guys getting starts for the first time or freshmen, a transfer. So, to watch their growth throughout has been pretty awesome. I think the biggest thing, and we kind of felt it, is, you start to read your press clippings and the media talks and your friends and parents are talking, and it's very hard to eliminate those distractions in the world that we live, which is with our phones and instantaneous information. So our Coach Corrigan is very good at setting the expectations, resetting expectations, resetting the standard, reminding them of the standard, and that when you're on top, people are hunting you. So you don't get a free hall pass, if you will. And we kind of felt that with Virginia. We had a desperate Virginia team. They were fighting for their season. We rolled in there. I think we became a little bit loose, and we found out what that would do. So that was a great opportunity for us to reset through this season, and we have not been the same team since. We saw a desperate Duke team this past weekend who made us work for everything, and our guys continue to battle. That was a really good showing. We did not have that against Virginia. So we've got a very good Syracuse team, and our guys know, the 2 games that we played them last year, we felt that we were embarrassed. Wasn't our best games, and the heightened sense of focus has been apparent this week.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Is there a personality that's come out from the team, especially after that Virginia loss? And sort of how does that personality sort of manifest itself on the field?
Yeah, this team is, first of all, this team is extremely connected, very bonded and close. And I wouldn't say that the other teams have not been, but this team in particular is. We're very happy-go-lucky. We got a lot of jokesters, a lot of smiles. Honestly, it's kind of refreshing. Again, we know what the expectations are. We feel the pressures, but to be light and airy at times, and there's time to be serious, there's time to be light, and this group knows how to do both, and knows when to mix in a little bit of a joke to break the. Yeah, exactly. So, I would say that we haven't gotten close to our ceiling at all, and I think we know that.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Now, one of the things you are particularly known for is your defenses. You seem to have a knack for building amazing defensive teams and units over the years, and not just at Notre Dame, but certainly throughout your career. You got to tell us, Ryan, what is your special sauce in creating that defensive mix that is able to stand that pressure, that attacking pressure, and really contribute to the game?
Yeah, thanks for those kind words. Appreciate that. But I think it's utilizing the players you have in front of you. Not every group is the same. Certainly the philosophies change. But I've always had a aggressive approach to defense. I think it's a bang bang sport. Things happen in a nanosecond, and to make a decision live and in person is very tough. If you're tending to make aggressive decisions, whether they're right or wrong, they usually work out in your favor because they are aggressive. So, and it's so much easier if you're behind the play to react to aggressive decision as it is to be passive. And, going all the way back, I think it's just that mindset. Get up, guard the ball, and we can react off of that. And, certainly we have the horses here at Notre Dame. That hasn't always been the case. At Navy, we had a couple of players that we would work our defenses around. At Stony Brook, we were different. It changes now, whatever it is. And so I tend to, find the players and then move the philosophy. But again, it's aggressive thinking, make aggressive decisions. And if there's a mistake in there, we'll be able to aggressively work out of it. That would be it. But it really comes down to the players, John. I can't take credit. I've been extremely fortunate, but it's a very simple system.
Yeah, but there's something to be said about being lucky and being in the right place, and also setting the right system. And I think that's part of what your philosophy and your success has been. Yes, getting those right players, but that's success is coming from also the mindset you're helping these kids to develop. So I want to touch on that idea of mindset a little bit. How are you shifting mindset for these kids to be more aggressive? Is there something you're doing, or is it just the way that you guys practice and you're like, this is how we're going to practice, and this is what we expect from you in the game in terms of that aggressive nature?
Yeah, no, this is going to sound, but it kind of goes to the holistic nature of this conversation. It's all about connectivity, to be honest with you. Talking through scenarios, situations, understanding where they're coming from and the why of them. Why did you make that decision, or what did you see? I spent some time asking those questions. When I was a younger coach, I don't want to say it was like, do what I tell you. But, as I become a little bit more of a veteran in this profession and understanding mindsets and kids, and that, they want a piece of it, it's got to be inclusive. And if you look around the world of sports, I think the best coaches are extremely inclusive. Whether it's Sean McVay of the Rams, or John Cooper with the Lightning, they're going to get more out of their players if they're more willing to give and get than anything else. So that's really the mindset. I just spend time. I don't yell and scream. I'd have those moments. I try to bring a higher energy. I like to celebrate the small wins. The things that might not show up on a TV screen, but we know it as a team and a coach and a player. I try to spend a lot of time with that, and I'm a believer that standards are never met. The bar is very high here, but it will never get close to it. And so we got to continue to remind ourselves that, hey, as we get close, this thing keeps going. Like, it's a ladder that is all the way to the moon, and we're never going to get there. So like, let's keep pushing it. And I remind them of the standard every day.
That's incredible. That's great advice. I love hearing that. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about recruiting, because that's a big part of your responsibility at Notre Dame. And at this point, you've had to evaluate thousands of players in your career. I'd love to hear a little bit about the attributes that matter most to you, the ones that don't show up on the film, they don't show up in the stats, but when you immediately see it, that attribute, that kid can help us win because of the way that they're carrying themselves, because of what they're doing. I'd love to hear a little bit about that, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, the first thing I would never do is to upset the culture of our locker room. You got to be a high character kid, a high personal kid, somebody that could fit seamlessly into our locker room. That's the first thing. We're going to get the best lacrosse player, or we're going to be competing for the best lacrosse player, the best athlete. I understand that. But to me, it becomes the connectivity to them and Notre Dame, to our locker room, to our current players. That is the single most important thing. At Navy, it was a different thing, at Stony Brook, etc. So it changes institutionally, but I have never shied away from recruiting the best players and then seeing where those chips may lie. And that's how we play it here. We identify, we spend time, we do our due diligence, and then, obviously seeing them live and in person and evaluating that way. But most importantly is actually meeting them and their families, and then making a determination, hey, does Johnny, for lack of a better word or name, fit here? And it might not be the fit. Like, we've had some tremendous players come through here, recruits, that just weren't great fits for us. And that's okay. We got to be willing to let them walk out, even if they wanted to come to school here, and know that, whoever we bring in or get is going to be the right fit for us. So it's understanding what your culture is, what your needs are as a program, and not deviating from that. And it's very easy to deviate, but it only takes one bad apple to bring it all down.
So let's talk a little bit about those bad apples, or that bad apple. What is a red flag that somebody might overlook, but for you, you're like, no, this is going to make me pause on this kid. This is going to make me rethink. They have the talent, they have the drive, but this thing is just gnawing at me. And
I can't get over it. You got to be selfless. It's not about what you can do for yourself. It's about what you can do for others. And that's in all facets of the program, academically, spiritually, socially, and athletically. So those never change. Those pillars will never deviate from that. If you can't hold a conversation with your future teammate or the coaching staff, and you're on your device and you're distracted, and then, there's a red flags for us. Being present at that moment, not that that's an interview, but it is ultimately an interview both ways. They're evaluating us as people, as coaches, as leaders, and we're evaluating them as well.
It's awesome. It's great insight. I really appreciate that. I want to stay on the topic of player development for a little bit. A couple more questions. As you talked about, you guys are always competing for some of the best talent that's out there. What's going to separate, though, when the player comes to Notre Dame? What's going to separate them from getting on the field and riding the bench, or not getting on the field? What is the difference?
Yeah, that is a really good question. One that one of the TV personalities from this past weekend asked me prior to our game, and IQ is a big part of it, and we're finding more and more, because of the club lacrosse scene, or the amount of games that these young men are playing in high school, they're losing out on the development piece. And so we're spending a lot of our our fall ball, if you will, developing these guys. And the guys that get on the field are honestly the ones that up here are able to connect the pieces quicker than the others. And that to me is the biggest differentiator. Are they able to process the information quicker than the next person?
Exactly.
And that's not always like a skill thing. And you'd be surprised at how many talented kids we have on the bench that, are just unable to make that. And it's not because they're not trying. It's just that it's coming a little bit slower and later for them. So that to me is the biggest thing. Like, hey, you might have been an All-American in high school, the best player, the number one recruit, but are you able to really dive into the tendencies strategically and individually that are going to make you an elite player and on the field, because we don't need you to do everything that you did in high school. We need you to do your job here, whatever that job is.
So that ability to connect the pieces is going to get them on the field. Now, what separates the players that are on the field from some of the greatest players that have come through your program? You know, a couple of the best ones recently came from my hometown, I'm proud to say, and the Kavanaugh brothers.
Yeah.
And so what separates great players like them from just the kids that are playing the roles? And we all need role players. We all can't be that great players, but those other kids, just there's something different. There's something special. What have you seen?
Yeah, using your hometown as a perfect example, like the Kavanaughs had it. You know, they were emotionally driven, fierce competitors, were willing to do whatever it took to win that moment, win that game, win that play, whatever it was. And they never deviated from that at all. Like Will Lynch, another Rockville Center guy, he was the same thing, had a tremendous chip on his shoulder, fierce competitor, and would do whatever it took to win that next play, no matter what. Like, that's the it factor, right? They might be small or under recruited or whatever it was, but once the light bulb goes off in between the lines, you know, they were not going to be pushed around or shoved, or they just played with that chip on their shoulder. Those are different. They're, you know, like, that's who the Kavanaughs were. And that's hard to find. Yeah. You know, everybody has it. And, you know, they do.
That's awesome. That's really, really, really insightful stuff. And I know the folks listening to this and the kids out there, I think it's important for them to hear that. You've got to be that dog when you step on that field, and that's got to be what matters.
That's it.
So I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit here, and I'm going to circle back to two questions from our two cross athletes. So we've got Andrew, who's a high school lacrosse player, and Andrew wanted to know, what's the best way to get recognized during your recruiting summer? That's summer going into the junior year of high school.
Thanks for the question, Andrew. Appreciate it. I think the best thing for you to do is to, first of all, it's a marketing situation. You need to enlighten those that you have interest in, of where you're going to be, who you're playing for, what events you'll be at, you know, give a background on yourself. So the bottom line is reach out to those coaches, identify a couple of reach schools, you know, where you think you could probably realistically fit, and then reach out to them actively. Not a million emails, just a couple bullet points, what your grade point average is, where do you go to high school, what club team do you play for, who your coaches are, and what events you'll be at. That's the first thing. There's thousands of kids that we hear from daily. So don't forget that you are marketing yourself. And then if you have a small video or a highlight film, to include that as well. And then it's up to us to do the work. You know, we got to get out to those events. We got to see you play, and then we'll make a determination. Before I get off of that, the other thing you should do, Andrew, is have a better understanding of, you know, what level of play you might play at, and talk to your coaches, your high school coach, your club coach. Ask them for feedback, because that will help you on your path.
That's awesome. I've got the second question here, and it's from Austin. He's a middle school lacrosse player, and he has a really insightful question. And it's, what are the biggest mistakes you see midfielders, attackmen, and defensemen make at the college level? Now, you don't have to go through all three if you want to pick one, or if you just want to say players in general. But when I saw this, I was like, that's a kid who's thinking.
Yeah, Austin, you're thinking it right, man. That's a tough question. I'm going to stick with midfielders, because I think that at your age, it's easy to become a specialist. And I think the more variety you have in playing styles, in other words, be a two-way midi. Don't be an offensive midi or a defensive midi. Play both. Play defense, play offense, play the wings. It's very easy to be pigeonholed into something that you think you are, but honestly, you're looking for the college coach to make that determination. So have variety in your play style. Be good at ground balls, be good at scoring, be good at playing defense, be good at clearing the ball, be good at riding. That's what I would tell you. So those young men that at the collegiate level that struggle are ones that thought they were something, and we tried to make them something else, because that was the need for our program.
So they've got to come in, be willing to fit a system, fit a need in a program, not say this is all I can do.
Exactly right.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Thank you, Ryan. Those are great questions. And I'm sure Andrew and Austin are going to be thrilled to hear your answers and your insight. That's incredible. I'm going to switch gears again on you and talk a little bit about coaching and culture, because one of the fastest growing populations we have on the Cross app right now is our coaches and trainers. So there's a lot of young coaches or even experienced coaches and trainers who are out there and hungry for some insight. So I know hearing things from you is going to be really important. And you've already talked about this idea of standards throughout this conversation. And I've seen you in the past talk about standards. And you say that standards change and they're built daily. Help us understand that a little bit more. What do you mean by that? Give us a little more detail on that.
Yeah, those are things that you have to live by. Nothing skill-based. It's effort. It's focus. It's attention to detail. It's being a good person. It's being selfless. Those are standards. It's not how did you slide or did you do this? Like, it's the non-negotiables that you as a coach are setting for your program, your unit, your whatever. And so you have, first of all, have to be clear on your standards, and standards aren't a million things. I think it has to be, 2 to 5 that are standards, that are non-negotiables for you to live by in your team. And then you really, really dive into them. You mention them daily. You remind them of their standards. You focus in on details of the standard. If it's in a drill or how they approach their practices or their film session or whatever it is, you have to constantly remind your players of what the standards are. And then you have to use examples of the positive and negatives of those standards being focused.
Yeah. And if a standard starts to slide, what's the response? What's the coach's response? Is it to beat it down? Is it to, give them feedback in public? Is it to give them feedback in private? How do you manage sort of responding when you start to see standards slide for an individual player or a collective group?
Yeah. For me, I think it's as a unit. So like for us defensively, I remind them as a unit of our standards. I use examples to point out the positives of our standards, and they understand through whatever my responses are, the negatives of it. I don't like to point out individuals when I'm talking about a standard, unless it's to showcase a positive example of it. A standard is a group thing to me, and the group needs to reinforce it. So pure accountability, pure coaching with your standard, most importantly, are things that you should try to emulate and evolve to.
Yeah. Is there one standard that you think has the biggest impact on the trajectory of a team? So if I'm a coach and I'm saying, you know what, I haven't really set the best standards. I want to start implementing standards. Where do I start? What's that first standard from your perspective?
For me, it's effort. In everything we do, in between the lines, you got to give effort. You finish everything you do. So finish, effort, those would be the 2 non-negotiables I would start with. If it's for your team, it's going to be a little bit different than maybe for your unit. Again, the defense is going to be a little bit different. Like communication is a standard. It's a non-negotiable. We have to communicate. We have to give effort. We need to be focused in on details. And so like those are our standards. And, it changes year to year. One will add one or take away one, whatever it is, so those would be the ones I'd start with though.
That's great. Now you started down this path of player accountability, and this idea of player-led culture or player-led team is certainly out there right now in the coaching vernacular. What does that mean to you? What does that look like for you? How does that show up? Is there an example of what that looks like for you?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, I think it's about being inclusive, not dismissing athletes' thoughts and opinions and feelings for that matter. It doesn't mean that's how you're going to make your decisions as the coach, the leader, but you're certainly going to take the input to understand better. If you're dismissing what they're saying to you, then you're going to lose them at some point. This guy just doesn't care about me, and he's not willing to understand what we're going through at this moment or what we're feeling or hearing or thinking. So that's the first thing. The second thing is allowing them the leeway to coach, to correct their teammates, their peers, to lead them. And the best teams I've ever been around are the ones that are peer-led, peer-coached, where I'm just there to guide. I don't need to yell. They beat me to the punch. Again, identifying standards, that's the first place your peers start. And if they're able to take that, then they'll be able to get you through any situation, including, that current moment or whatever the situation on or off the field is.
Yeah, these kids are smart. They know the game. They know the game extremely well. They've been playing for years, and they know what's good and what's not so good in terms of the way people are playing or how they're showing up. So I think that's really important. I've got one last topic for you, and it's my favorite of the conversation, and it's faith and perspective. And so what I wanted to dive in a little bit with you is, at your level and at what's going on right now for you and your team, pressure has to be everywhere. And I'm sure there's an immense pressure to win. And I'm sure you feel it. I'm sure the rest of the staff feels it. The team feels it. But for you personally, how does faith show up in a way that helps you deal with some of that pressure?
Yeah, it's a big part of my life. I'm extremely faith-based and spiritual. Everybody, I don't push faith or spirit to anybody. It's all individualistic. For me in particular, I take a moment a day, if you will, to meditate, to think about things. I've got a place here on campus working at Notre Dame allows me some opportunities. The grotto is my spot on campus that I'll disappear to remind myself that it is a game and there's more important things, and to, ask God for his guidance in that moment. And I do it before every game during the national anthem. That's my time to, connect, if you will, and to draw upon God to get me through the moment and to watch over our guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. How does faith show up in your leadership of the guys? And so I've got to imagine it shows up in your own personal standards, your own personal character, but how does it show up when you're trying to lead them both on the field and then, of course, off the field? Because, we're developing young men. We're not just developing players here.
Yeah, I think the first thing is you got to be empathetic. You got to show empathy for them, their moments. I don't know everything that's happening in their world, school, socially, athletically, home life. So I got to be empathetic to that moment and understand a little bit, take some time and to remind them and me that, there's a lot of different things going on, and you can't lose focus in that. And if there's opportunities for you to ground yourself, to remind yourself, you need to take it. And that, again, that's faith-based, that's spiritual. It's allowing yourself some grace and dignity to get through those tough times.
That's awesome. I got one last question for you, Ryan. It's a big one for the middle schooler, the high schooler out there who is dreaming of one day playing for Irish blue and gold. What's your last piece of advice for them?
Oh my God. Have fun playing.
Good. That's perfect. That is absolutely perfect.
That was tough. Have fun. It's a lot of pressure. The parents on the sideline, the screaming, the yelling. Just don't forget why you play the game. Have fun.
That's awesome. Ryan, thank you so much. It was so great to catch up with you. So appreciate your time that you spent with us. Good luck on the rest of the season. Good luck this weekend. I want to see you smash Cuse and get out there and win another one. All right, bud?
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thanks so
much.
For
Ryan. Great to see you.
You, buddy. Thanks, man.
Care.
Bye.
So that's it, folks. Our first Cross Chat Up, episode 1, is in the books. We hope you enjoyed it, and please stay tuned for more real conversations about sport and faith coming each and every month. Stay blessed, keep putting God first, and we'll see you out there on the field.